All I asked for was 1 week off to say goodbye to my dying father. My manager said no. What didn't he know? My father was a secret government accountant, building a $47 million case against the company, and I just inherited every piece of evidence. What came next wasn't grief. It was war. My name is Elyse Gardiner, and the moment my manager, Croft Brennan, told me that my dying father wasn't his problem, something inside me snapped. I stood there in the break room, the stale scent of burnt coffee and fryer oil clinging to my grease-stained uniform, eyes red from exhaustion and grief, and I begged for 1 week off. Just 7 days. My dad was in room 247 at the General Hospital, machines breathing for him. His final moments. Croft didn't even look up from the shift schedule in his hands. Find coverage. Or don't bother coming back. Your drama isn't my concern. That sentence detonated inside me. After 3 years of working every holiday, covering no-shows, staying late, scrubbing sticky booths while others clocked out, I realized something awful. To Croft, I wasn't a person. I was covered. I walked out of that diner without another word. His voice chased me through the swinging kitchen doors. You'll never work in this town again, Elyse. I'll make sure everyone knows you're unreliable. But I didn't stop. I drove straight to the hospital and collapsed into the chair beside my father's bed. Arlo Gardiner, the man who raised me after Mom walked out when I was 7. Quiet, always hunched over his laptop in our cramped apartment. Always kind. Always there. He died the next morning, holding my hand. The nurse said it was peaceful. It didn't feel that way. The next 6 days were a blur of grief and bureaucracy, funeral, planning with zero money, dodging calls from landlords and debt collectors, trying to be a daughter and an adult all at once. The funeral was small. A few of Dad's coworkers came. Even Mrs. Patterson from next door, the one who always complained about our TV volume. But the weirdest part, 3 strangers in tailored suits stood silently at the back. They didn't introduce themselves. They didn't stay long. Just ... watched. Something about them made my skin crawl. I went back to the diner the following Monday, unsure what I was even doing. Everything looked the same, smelled the same. Croft stood behind the register like nothing had happened. Penny and Rue, the other servers, gave me soft, sympathetic looks but said nothing. Croft had made his rules clear: grieve quietly, or go. I tied on my apron and stepped onto the floor. That's when I saw him, a man in a navy blue suit, standing at the host station, scanning the room like he wasn't there for waffles. His eyes found mine. Something clicked in his expression. Elyse Gardiner. I nodded, heart thudding. I looked like hell, hair tied back in a greasy knot, apron wrinkled, mascara smudged. Director Hayes, he said, flashing a badge. Treasury Financial Crimes Division. We need to talk. Croft slithered over immediately, wearing his fake customer service smile. Is there a problem? Elise's been emotional lately, her father just passed. Hayes didn't blink. No problem, but we do need privacy. I untied my apron and followed him outside. Croft stared after us, frowning, like a man losing control of something he thought he owned. Inside his government-issued sedan, Hayes opened a leather briefcase. Inside, files, dozens of them, and at the top, my father's name. Your father, Hayes began, was one of our most valuable forensic accountants. He spent 15 years auditing corporations suspected of large-scale tax evasion. I blinked. My dad worked from home. Said it was boring, number crunching. It wasn't boring. It was brilliant, and dangerous. He pulled out documents with labels like Hartwell Food Services, shell accounts, and offshore transfer paths. Your employer, Hayes said, was your father's final assignment. He was building a case that could bring down their entire executive board. My mind reeled. I'd been slinging hash browns for a company that was defrauding the government and stealing from its employees. And Dad had been silently documenting all of it. But here's the issue, Hayes said. He encrypted all the files, stored them in crypto wallets. We've searched everything, ... But the access keys died with him. Unless ... He looked at me. Did he leave you anything? Back home, I stared at Dad's desk. It was like walking into the mind of a genius. Hoarder notebooks, USB drives, codes written in tiny script. There was a safe behind the dresser. I'd never opened it. It took me 3 hours, a headache, and a cry-filled breakdown to realize the combination. Dad's birthday, my birthday, the day Mom left, in that order, inside one envelope. My name was written in his neat handwriting. Inside, that 24 alphanumeric sequences, each labeled with a company name. Number 17, Hartwell Food Services. The next day, I returned to work like nothing had changed, but everything had. I saw Croft now, his overpriced watch, the way he handled cash tips. The late-night vendor meetings in the back office. Penny had said her overtime hours were missing from her pay stubs. Rue mentioned health insurance deductions that never translated into real coverage. The kitchen staff worked hours that never added up. I started documenting everything. Schedules, sales reports, customer logs, register discrepancies. I saw Hartwell the way Dad must have seen them. A monster in khakis and clipboards. 3 weeks after Dad's funeral, I had a binder full of corruption, and a choice. I could hand it to the government. Or, I could do something else. I called Summit Restaurant Group, Hartwell's biggest competitor. They'd been trying to buy Hartwell for years but kept getting blocked by regulatory complications. I met with their acquisitions director, Victoria Cross. She was sharp, focused, and didn't flinch when I laid it all out. "You're offering us documented evidence that could destroy our competitor," she said. "And what are you asking in return?" $47 million, I replied. "The exact amount Hartwell owes in unpaid taxes." She stared at me for a long second, then she nodded. We negotiated for 2 hours. A week later, I signed a deal. The money hit my account. The files hit Summit's legal department, and then, I went to work one last time. Croft was counting drawer receipts like always. Probably skimming as usual. "Croft," I said, holding out a piece of paper, "this is for you." He frowned, annoyed, and took it. Then he read it. Then, his face turned white. "What is this?" "It's a receipt," I said. "From Summit Restaurant Group. They bought your company. And they're delivering all of my father's evidence to the feds tomorrow." His hands trembled. You killed us." I smiled. "No, you did that. I just made sure you paid for it." I untied my apron, dropped it on the counter, walked out, but this wasn't the end. This was just the first strike. Because justice is messy, justice is slow, and revenge is $47 million, and a plan with your name on Edie could have disappeared. Bought a beach house somewhere no one knew my name, slept on silk sheets, let Croft rot in court, while I drank mango daiquiris in the sun. But that's not what my father raised me to do. Instead, I found something he would have been proud of. The Elyse Gardiner Foundation for Workers' Rights. Our mission: to fight back against the wage theft, harassment, and labor violations that had ruined lives in silence for too long. We weren't a charity. We were a war room armed with lawyers, data analysts, and the fire of every person who had ever been told your pain isn't company policy. Our first step: hire every displaced Hartwell worker. Penny, the server who'd been barely making rent for her and her 2 kids, became our operations coordinator. Her first paycheck, bigger than anything she'd ever seen. She cried when she opened it. Then, she got to work. Rue, quiet and sharp-eyed, took over as head of documentation. Building protocols to train workers on how to spot and record violations, hidden cameras in managers' offices, fake payroll logs, ghost shifts. The kitchen staff became our field investigation team, going undercover in restaurants, big box stores, warehouses, anywhere. The smell of abuse clung to the uniforms. Within 3 months, we'd filed successful lawsuits against 12 companies, recovering over $2 million in stolen wages. Word started to spread. We weren't just the organization you called when you were in trouble. We were the name that made abusive employers panic. Meanwhile, Croft was unraveling like a wet napkin. His federal trial moved forward quickly. Tax evasion, wire fraud, wage theft, labor law violations. Civil suits stacked behind the criminal ones. Like dominoes, I went to every hearing. Sat right in the front row. He asked the judge to bar me from the courtroom. The judge replied, "This is a public trial. She's staying." Every time I testified, I made sure to look Croft in the eye when I said, "He denied me time to be with my dying father." He laughed when I begged. One juror cried when I said it. Croft's lawyer tried the just following orders. Defense that fell apart the moment we submitted the bonus payment records. Turns out Croft had received $60,000 in bonuses for operational savings, translation, stolen tips, unpaid overtime, and slashed benefits. The judge didn't even blink before handing down the sentence. 8 years in federal prison. 5 years supervised probation. $300,000 in civil judgments. His house, gone. His car, repossessed. His savings, seized. His family, moved to another state. One day I got a letter. Handwritten, pages of shaky penmanship. He talked about growing up poor. About how being a manager made him feel like somebody for the first time in his life. He admitted that denying my leave had been spiteful. Said he was sorry. He ended it with a question. Do you think I deserved all of this? I never responded. Instead, I built. The foundation grew fast, offices in 3 states, a team of employment lawyers, an army of investigators, and our own media contacts. We trained workers, exposed corporations, made noise. We even had our hotline, and the calls kept coming. People were tired of being disposable. 2 years after the collapse of Hartwell, the Elyse Gardiner Foundation had recovered $15 million in wages, shut down 14 illegal schemes, sent 7 more executives to prison, built a reputation that scared the hell out of corporate boardrooms, and then Summit called me again. Victoria Cross, the same woman who bought the evidence from me, scheduled a meeting. We've got a problem, she said. Some former Hartwell managers we absorbed didn't change their habits. They were skimming tips, manipulating hours, pulling from the same dirty playbook Croft had written. We want to make sure Summit is clean, she said. Would your foundation audit us? I said yes. But with terms: full access, immediate restitution to all harmed employees, public transparency, and we would report any illegal activity to the authorities. No exceptions, Victoria agreed. We found minor violations in 3 locations, all run by former Hartwell scum. They were fired. Summit paid $200,000 in back wages, and then something unexpected. We want to help you go national, Victoria said. We'll fund it. No strings. We believe in what you're doing. I paused. If you ever violate labor laws, I told her, we'll come for you, too. She smiled. That's why I'm giving you the money. By year 3, the foundation was everywhere. We'd recovered over $50 million, sent 23 executives to prison, built a database that mapped corporate abuses across the country. We weren't just reacting anymore. We were predicting. We were warning. But we weren't finished. Our newest case involved a hotel chain, one with luxury branding and a reputation for discretion. Housekeepers there were being overworked, underpaid, and sexually harassed. Worse, evidence suggested ties to organized crime, and local politicians topped the scale. Hundreds of victims, millions in fraud. I sat in my office late one night, the lights dim, Croft's unopened letter in my desk drawer. Sometimes I thought about him, sitting in a cell, trying to justify the pain he caused just because no one had ever told him he mattered. He asked me if he deserved what happened. The answer: he deserved what he gave others. I just made sure he got it back with compound interest. The first time I saw the footage, I had to stop the video twice. A housekeeper, no older than 20, hunched over a hallway cart. Her uniform was stained. Her hands were trembling. A hotel manager's sleek suit, confident smirk cornering her near the service elevator. No sound, just body language. Aggression, disgust, fear. That was day 1 of our investigation, and I already knew this wasn't just another case. The hotel chain was called Meridian Suites, a luxury brand with high-end clientele and political donations. Tucked behind every smiling concierge, we received dozens of anonymous complaints from staff across multiple states. Withheld pay, sexual harassment, forced overtime, employment records, threats of deportation for immigrant workers. It had all the hallmarks of corporate exploitation, but something about this one felt deeper. Our contact was Anna Reyes, a former housekeeper turned whistleblower. She kept her face blurred in interviews and refused to meet in public. When she sent over her first batch of evidence videos, voice memos, scanned pay stubs, we knew 2 things immediately. She was credible. She was terrified. They know how to bury people, she told us, not just metaphorically. Phase 1. Infiltration.ru assembled a team of undercover investigators, former Hartwell workers trained to blend in. They posed as housekeepers, kitchen staff, and valet attendants across 5 Meridian locations. What did they find? Room attendants clocked out after 8 hours, but were forced to stay 12 hours. Wages are routed through shell staffing agencies to avoid taxes. Fake training fees deducted from paycheck. Security cameras mysteriously disabled during VIP events. Managers trading shifts for favors, but the real bomb dropped when we traced payments from Meridian's parent company to a contractor named Blackwall Logistics, a security firm tied to political campaign donations, several of which lined up with bribery investigations. We weren't just dealing with wage theft, we were staring into the eyes of organized labor abuse protected by political shields. I sat in a meeting room in D.C., across from federal prosecutors, and laid everything out. We believe these hotels are laundering money through staffing companies, falsifying tax records, and covering up harassment under ND. We have data, documentation, and undercover witness testimony. They were interested but hesitant. We've tried going after Meridian before, one agent said. They have friends and places we don't. Good, I replied. Because we have something they don't, a motive bigger than fear. Phase 2, exposure. I called in a favor from Tara Liu, an investigative journalist who's exposed on warehouse exploitation had once shut down an entire shipping district. She listened, then leaned back in her chair. Tell me you've got names. I've got more than names. I've got payroll logs, hidden video, and a server image that connects Meridian to political donations made illegally. Her eyes lit up. You want a feature or a takedown? I want justice delivered in bold print. The article dropped. 3 days later, Behind the Suites, The Hidden Crimes of America's Luxury Hotel Empire by Tara Liu. In collaboration with the Elyse Gardiner Foundation, it named executives, cited victims, linked campaign contributions to silence deals, and it went viral. Within 48 hours, Meridian stock plummeted 32% to state attorneys general opened investigations. Xana Reyes received death threats and I received a call from someone I hadn't heard from in 20 years. Elyse, it's your mother. She'd walked out when I was 7. Now here she was, soft voice, older, more cautious. I saw the article. I didn't know you'd become her. Her, the one who fights. Your father used to be that. Before they broke him, froze. Who's they? The people he worked for. The ones who took everything when he got too close. My world tilted. For 3 years, I'd seen Dad as a silent crusader. A lone wolf building cases the government never pursued fast enough. But what if he hadn't been working alone? What if he'd been fighting a machine so big that it cost him more than sleep? Phase 3, retaliation. Our servers were breached. Our emails leaked. Rue's car was vandalized. One of our undercover agents was followed home. Croft had been a petty tyrant, Meridian. They were a syndicate wearing hotel uniforms, so we hit back. Publicly, legally, loudly. We launched a national hotline, opened 7 new legal actions, partnered with immigration attorneys, published open letters to the Department of Labor. Summit Restaurant Group even offered private security for our staff. But the final strike came when we subpoenaed Blackwall Logistics internal documents and found my father's name. One report, dated 10 months before his death. An alert, subject, Elyse Gardiner inquiry flagged. Treasury associate. High risk, recommend monitoring. They'd been watching him. They knew. And when he died, they celebrated. I sat in my office, hands shaking, staring at that file. My father didn't just die of illness. He died under pressure, surveillance, threat, isolation, and that changed everything now. Now it was personal again. Not just for me. For Anna, for Rue, for the housekeepers, the cooks, the security guards, the drivers. The thousands who had been crushed by men in suits and silk sheets. They wanted silence. We'd give them something else. The moment I read the surveillance memo, father's name flagged, tracked, monitored, everything crystallized. He hadn't just died alone. He'd died watching, cornered, possibly silenced. That wasn't paranoia anymore. That was proof. They hadn't just ignored his evidence. They'd buried it. Buried him. And now, I was digging him up. We called it Operation Deep Ledger. A full-scale investigation into Blackwall Logistics, Meridian Suites, and the government. Contracts that tied them together like veins in a diseased heart. Our legal team partnered with a coalition of labor unions, immigrant rights advocates, and 2 former FBI analysts who'd grown tired of watching the system protect criminals in expensive shoes. What did we uncover? Staggering. Meridian funneled consulting fees to Blackwall Logistics, which funneled bribes to campaign accounts through real estate LLC. SAT, leased for senators and 2 state governors, had accepted hospitality packages that were coded. Payoffs. Victims of workplace abuse were silenced with NDAs backed by threats of deportation or career blacklisting. My father's files had nearly exposed the whole thing. But he was stalled, isolated, and eventually erased from relevance by restructuring. He hadn't failed. They'd made sure he couldn't finish, but I could. The final blow would take coordination, timing, and a media firestorm. So we made one. We created a live-streamed event called the Gardiner Dossier, Digital Press Conference, where we presented a timeline of corruption, victim testimonials, scanned internal documents, and a statement from Anna Reyes. I was assaulted, unpaid, and threatened, Anna said. But I'm no longer afraid. Over 2.4 million people watched within 24 hours. The hashtag Justice for ARLO trended globally. Two whistleblowers from inside Blackwall came forward. One of them handed over a folder labeled Quiet Files, Tier 2 suppression candidates inside. Elyse Gardiner, Arlo Gardiner, Anna Reyes, Luand, 15 other names. My name wasn't just on a watch list. I was marked as a threat. Good, because I was about to become their worst one. The fallout hit like a hurricane. The DOJ launched federal RICO charges against Blackwall and Meridian's executive board. Multiple politicians resigned or were indicted. Class action lawsuits flooded in. Anna Reyes was given a security detail, and Croft, from his prison cell, gave a deposition confirming that Hartwell had once received consulting advice from Blackwall reps, who taught them how to manipulate labor schedules legally. It all connected. Every stolen tip, every refused bathroom break, every denied leave request. All roads led back to the machine. But now, the machine was on fire. 3 months later, I stood in front of Arlington Hall, preparing to testify before a congressional oversight committee. I wore the same necklace Dad gave me on my 16th birthday. A cheap gold locket with a photo of the two of us inside, sitting in a diner booth, smiling like the world hadn't started lying to us yet. When they called my name, the room hushed. Ms. Gardiner, the chairman said, "You've become a national figure for labor justice. How did this all begin?" I looked him in the eye. It began when my manager told me my father's death wasn't his problem. It ends now, with accountability. Gasps. Camera flashes. A moment of silence that tasted like thunder. That night, as I walked to my car, a woman stepped out of the shadows. Blonde, thin, nervous hands. Elyse, my mother. We hadn't spoken since her cryptic call. I left because I was scared, she said, voice barely audible. Your father got too close to something. I didn't want to be next. You could have stayed, I replied. She looked down. I didn't think you'd survive either. I didn't, I said. Not the version of me you remember. Dude, you hate me. I don't have time. Then I walked away, because the past had already stolen enough from me. The future needed my full attention. 6 months later, the Arlo Gardiner Foundation expanded into 15 states. We'd recovered $84 million for exploited workers, helped pass 3 state laws improving labor transparency, trained hundreds of investigators, and created a mobile app where employees could record, report, and get real-time legal support. Companies feared us. Workers trusted us. The government finally listened to us. Croft, S prison sentence was extended after he was found smuggling stolen employee data to an outside contact. Guess he never learned. I read his second letter. It ended with, "You destroyed my life. I hope you're proud." I smiled. Because I didn't destroy his life. He did. I just lit the sign that pointed people to the wreckage. And as for me, I still live in the same apartment. Still drink diner coffee. Still sit at my father's desk some nights and go through his old notes. But now, there's a framed quote on the wall above it. Dad's handwriting, taken from an old post-it I once found stuck to a monitor. Justice is just math with a conscience. And thanks to him, I learned how to balance the equation.